Welcome to the Off Script Podcast, your inside look at the Southeast film market with a spotlight on Louisiana's creative scene and the people moving it forward. I'm Fallon Goodson, and I'll be joined by my co-host Sky Lopez as we bring you a hot off-the-press breakdown of Louisiana's revamped film incentive with Jason Waggenspack, CEO of the Ranch Studios and president of Film Louisiana. We get into what the changes mean, how indie filmmakers can take advantage, and why now is the time to build lasting momentum in Louisiana's film industry. Welcome, Jason. Do you want to just give us a quick little 15-second bio?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jason Waggenspack. I am the founder and CEO of the Ranch Film Studios in Chalmette. I'm also the president of Film Louisiana.
We'll start where the hot news is, right? Can you walk us through this revamped film incentive that is all over the news right now that's saying Louisiana is now the top competitor for film incentive programs across the United States?
Yeah, sure. Look, I have been working for months now with Senator Bass, who put together Senate Bill 232, along with leadership in the House and the Senate, and LED. LED's Secretary Susan Bourgeois had put together a bill for the film industry that allowed for them for more flexibility. That flexibility is what you're kind of seeing right now in the news in Louisiana, where Meta has come in and is, investing $10 billion in a new data center, as well as several factories, aluminum, ammonium. I think we have several other billion-dollar companies that are coming in here. They're making some big changes in big business, and film is going to be one of those. They wanted to create a more opportunity to allow for them to go in and make offerings to studios in a moment's notice versus having to go into session every 2 years and ask the legislature to be able to enact that. It didn't change our cap. Our cap's still sitting at $125 million. What it did change is it changed a bunch of the internal caps, which it took away the per project and the per person cap. So it allows for larger projects, larger actors to have an opportunity to come to our state and enact bigger projects that we had normally seen in the earlier process of the industry. Bigger projects hopefully making their way here.
What prompted this shift all of a sudden?
Well, look, again, LED has always been our champion in the industry. They're the ones who put the program together almost 25 years ago. And what has happened is the new governor wanted this bigger business and wanted more of these opportunities. And we already had one of the top 5 programs in the country. And so we talked with studios, we talked to leadership and producers throughout the U.S. and really tried to figure out what is the best case scenario for Louisiana to shine once again. And these are some of the things that we came up with. And we're not even done. A lot of the rules haven't come out yet. We're working real hard with LED to get those promulgated in the next month or so. And there'll be some things, some newer things that you might not see in this bill that will allow for us to enact more competition and hopefully more local opportunities for filmmakers.
There's a lot of people out there that might not know how this actually works. I think if we could just do a little snapshot of that to help indie filmmakers that exist already in the state really take advantage of the tax incentives.
Sure. So we have a incentive program that is a 25% base credit. So that means if you come in, and I'm just going to use simple math, with $1 million project, you essentially could save 25% on all of your expenditures. So anything they're going to go and buy, anything you're going to go and rent, any of the services that'll be provided for you on your film, the state will give you an incentive back after you have gone through an audit process. Let's break it down really simply. So if you all have a brand new film that you're coming to the state of Louisiana for, and you want to film here, you're going to go to the Opportunity Louisiana website, LED's website, and you're going to apply for that tax credit. And you're going to give them an estimated budget of what you think is going to be spent here in the state of Louisiana. And they are then going to certify you, if obviously all things are approved, which should be, for a certain amount that you will have in your tax credit. And once you have that, they're going to say, all right, you're going to qualify for $250,000 of your $1 million film. Let's just say, like I said, for mathematical sake. You then go out and you shoot your film. And as you shoot your film, you obviously are collecting all of these invoices. You have somebody that's dealing with all the accounting and the payroll. And they're going to then go through an audit process with the state that allows for them to then take a look at everything, make sure that the people you're hiring are going to get an additional bump for local hires. They're going to make sure your spending is obviously local spending. And then you're going to go and you're going to finish that audit. And you're going to turn it back into LED. And then LED is going to look at it with LDR, and they're going to issue you a certification letter that says that you are now certified for your tax credit. And then when that is done, you can then take that certification, sorry, this is a long-winded process, back to LDR for cash, okay? At 88 cents on the dollar, they will give you a check. So there's a fee of 12% that if you're going to take your $250,000, let's say, that 12% is going to come out of that if you're going to sell it back to the state. Or if you found a high net individual here in the state of Louisiana that is willing to be an investor in your project, they may want to take that on themselves, and they become what's called the irrevocable designee. They can take 100% of that and use it against their Louisiana liability. So therefore, there's no reason for them to have to sell it back at a 12% clip back to the state of Louisiana. Now, let's go back to some of the percentages. So we have a 25% base, right? Well, if I hire a local labor, you two all, let's say I hire you two to be on my project, you all are Louisiana residents, you get a 15% bump on all of that local labor. So your local labor is now 40%, which is obviously a huge number and is really advantageous for projects that are looking to come in, because they don't recognize the fact that, okay, this is a big bump. It can get me maybe over that 30% hump that a lot of other competitors in the United States offer. So this is a nice and attractive opportunity for projects to come here.
Can we talk a little bit about the auditing process? What does that look like normally? And then also, do you call a specific person to be able to audit, or can just anybody audit your film?
That's a great question. And no, they're all state certified. So the state is going to recommend, actually, they are going to put together the auditor that is going to be on your project. And so you can ask for one of the previous auditors that maybe you've had a great relationship with or did a great job. But there's usually only 4 to 6 auditors in the entire state that will do film audits here in Louisiana. So they are going to be the ones who are going to put those together for you. That's going to be the audited process.
They are assigned to your project once you've put in the application.
Well, you put in the application, then you go spend the money. And then when the money's spent and your accounting team is ready to hand that over, all your books, that's when the audit process begins. And that audit process can take anywhere between 6 and 10 months, depending on how big your project is or how many expenditures you have.
Find is like the most common hiccup when people are applying for or in that process?
Well, in the independent world, it is not hiring the right accountants so that they understand what needs to be submitted to the auditors so it can be a quick turnaround. And so that is usually the biggest hiccup. There are other hiccups on the other side of the fence with slow auditors. There are hiccups with slow communication with LED. And I'm working on those things right now because I think that obviously constant communication is a good thing. And sometimes we're not getting as much when it comes through that process from the independent level. And mostly because a lot of the independents don't necessarily know to be the squeaky wheel, like ask the questions. Am I getting this right? Am I getting this wrong? Is there a timeline? Do I have an expectation of when to receive this back? Constantly staying on top of things is part of the job of a producer to make sure that you're getting what you need in a timely manner and then being able to turn around that tax credit in a timely manner. Because, hey, time is money. And if they're going to sit back and wait, you could potentially be paying a lot of bank fees, which I think nobody, no investor wants to see when you're trying to make a return on your movie.
Yeah, especially with the interest rates that the bank loans give. You want to pay that back as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Well, I kind of want to go a little way back and know more about you. Like, why film? How did that come into your life? How did you come to be part of the Ranch Studios?
Wow, way back. Okay. Because it does go way further back than the ranch. So I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Okay. And I've always been inspired by watching movies. You know, the first movie I ever saw was The Jungle Book, the very first Jungle Book my mother took me to. I still remember it to this day and how I felt watching that. And so I've always loved story. I love movies. And so as I got through high school and I began getting into college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My father's an engineer, my mother's an architect. And I knew that, you know, I could get into those very easily, but I was inspired to do something else. So I started acting and I was like, let me check out some theater at LSU. So I began doing small plays and I began doing short little movies with friends at LSU. And that really inspired me to want to be an actor. And so after about 2.5 years at LSU, I had a friend who was moving to New York and he was like, do you want to move to New York with me? I was like, absolutely. And I did. I really found a great home at a small actor's studio outside on the west side of Manhattan. And I began acting and began collaborating with other actors there. And we started making short films. But I was the actor and I didn't understand all the nuts and bolts of how to actually make it. And my roommate was the editor and he was the director. And I was like, man, this is where it's at. This is where the control of telling the story is. And I began to realize I don't want to be the story. I want to tell the story. And so I started losing my hair. As everybody kind of knows me by my bald head now, I began losing my hair in New York. And I was like, I don't really look so good on camera anymore. Let me switch gears and see what the business of and maybe more of the creative aspects of are all about. And so I was in New York for 2.5 years and decided to come home. And I wanted to go to UNO, which was a very established film school here at the time, 20-something years ago. UNO is a great school. But when I got there, I began to realize that my skill sets started to shine in the technical sense. So I became an editor. I started editing a bunch of projects. And then I became sort of the UPM of all the student films. And I was taking on everybody's project. And I was doing stuff outside of school too, where I would just find a group of people who wanted to continue telling stories. In school, we wrote our little 3-page script and we figured out how we were going to put it together, how we were going to light it, what we were going to do. And so we continued doing that. We made 3 and 5 and 10. And the next thing you know, we made 30-page scripts and we were just out shooting them and just really enjoying the craft of learning and learning from our failures and learning from the mistakes that we did. And I continue telling people that to this day. You just go and do stuff, you will get better at it. And so that became the passion of me as a filmmaker. But then I obviously, I fell in love. Actually, well before that, I fell in love and I knew I wanted to start a family. And I was like, I need to pay the bills. And the industry was blowing up around me. And so I got a job. My first job actually out of college was from one of my professors. And they gave me a job on, I think it's called Cigarettes in Babylon now, which is this French film. And I became their location manager. I was really good at logistics and I loved it. And then I got a job on a movie called Red was my next job with Morgan Freeman and Bruce Willis. And that's where my career really took off because after that, everybody in the film industry began to recommend me. And so I worked on Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And then I worked on the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn. And then I worked on Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters. And then I became this sought after location manager. I ended up doing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, ended up doing Terminator Genesis, which actually brought me to Chalmette, Louisiana, around this old Lowe's and this old Saba Center grocery store, which we took over and we built 16 sets inside of. And I looked at it after we were done and I said, I need to keep this because we need more infrastructure in the state. And there's a real opportunity. There's a ton of movies coming here. And so I went and I knocked on the door to the business owner and said, hey, first of all, I need to rent your parking lot out here because they were next door to where we were shooting. And I'm also going to be, taking over the building next to you. And he looked at me and said, well, how do I keep you here? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I see 400 cars every day coming in and out of here. It's like, yeah, it's a really big movie. We have a lot of extras. And he said, well, I want to see that every day. I said, well, actually, I'm trying to build more of a real estate play here in town for the film industry. Would you be interested in partnering with him? He said, absolutely. Put together a business plan. And 6 months later, Sidney Torres and I started the Ranch Film Studios. And now here we are 11 years in, and we've done 42 motion pictures, sonic series, and docs. We've done a lot inside of in Chalmette, and we've really put a mark here. And I'm really excited about that and I want to continue doing that.
Yeah, I remember when we first came to visit you at the Ranch Studios. It's quite an impressive situation you have going on out there. It feels like you're in LA, like you're walking onto an actual big studio lot. So it's really exciting to see that kind of stuff in Louisiana. And also, okay, so the film industry is so up and down, as you know. It is all over the place. And I always find it interesting to hear what keeps every individual motivated to stay in it when it's so up and down. What do you think drives you to keep fighting for it? Because obviously you were so involved and you're always pushing and helping and trying to drive this specific market forward. What keeps you doing that?
Look, I'm very passionate. I come from a large family, all right, and we've always, thought about family and community, and I think that's what really pushes me to want to continue doing that here and not move away. And so, in doing that, and in keeping with that inspiration, I feel that we have so much talent here in the state. And if I can find ways of getting everybody together, it's only going to raise me up. If I can rise others up, it's all going to happen for all of us. And it'll give me more opportunities if I give more opportunities to others first. And so that's what inspires me to want to do the legislative work, to do the political work, to continue helping anybody who calls me, as I'm sure you all know, you've called me in the past and asked me about different things in our industry. I will answer my phone to almost anyone. And I'm an open book. And I want you all to know that you can have this information because I want you to be successful. You're successful, I'm successful. You're going to be making big movies. Guess what? You come to my studio. I'm going to go out and try and to produce more of my own shows because I'm also a producer as well. But I also want you all to have the skill sets to be able to work on my projects and us to work together on your projects. And so I just look at things differently. I look at things uniquely. I feel I'm not an independent. I'm an independent person. I'm not a person who's so individually driven that I have to have it all on my own. I'm not selfish. Let's put it that way. I come from a basketball mentality where it's like, I'm only as good as the other person around me and my team. And if I can help build them up, then I think all of us are going to be better in this industry and see it through.
Yeah, it is wild how different the industry is here. When you were saying you pick up the phone for anyone, I mean, in LA, you had to stalk people. Here, you can get in touch with people. And I think that's what makes this market so unique. People do answer the phone and they do want to get back to you.
Yeah, the difference is here in Louisiana, people don't understand the business of this industry. We don't understand how to raise the money. We understand how to make the project, but then we don't understand what to do with it when we're done. And so that's been what I've been trying to educate myself and others about. And I really push forward the opportunity for independent distribution, which is a massive opportunity for people these days, in how to build a brand, how to market yourself, how to market the stories that you all want to tell. And so I really think you have a really great opportunity to drive community content these days. And if people will get more into telling great stories in their backyard, they'll find an audience that will want to lift them up. And then as they can continue telling those stories, it'll only grow to a larger marketplace. And so that's what I'm really hoping that we're going to find here in Louisiana, and more people will get more involved doing that.
Yeah, I was just talking to a filmmaker and she is crowdfunding something, really low budget, trying to, get help from the community. And she was talking about how hard that can even be, just raising a couple $1,000s. When a filmmaker is trying to make content for just pretty much nothing and they still are having trouble doing the crowd fundraising, what do you suggest? Are there any other avenues that they could go down?
I go back to what I said previously. Building a brand is your biggest part. We all have social media. We all have opportunities to push content. Tell your stories and push them in, the free marketplace to allow for your audience to come in and accept and love what you're saying. All right. Figure out what it is that can generate that larger opportunity for you. And then go and find potential sponsors. Go find brand opportunities. If you're telling a story around, I'm in a coffee shop right now, you're telling a story around a coffee shop, maybe this coffee shop would want to get involved and maybe sponsor you. If you can put their logo in the front or the back, or maybe you are sipping a cup of coffee as we're having this, this delightful conversation, or during whatever story it is that you're telling. Go find partnerships in that respect. There are people out there who are willing to partner with you because they either love what you're doing, they love who you are, or they know that they're going to get something back, and it could potentially be a marketing opportunity for them in the stories that you're telling. And it all comes back to, as you said, audience. So if you're building this brand, you have that audience, you get larger opportunities for larger sponsorships and branding that will help you raise that money until you then get the confidence to tell a longer form story that brings you to the studios, that now opens up a larger Rolodex of opportunities for larger distribution.
Yeah, it's true. It's thinking outside of the box and being really creative with ways that you can really push and drive your project and just get eyes on it. And speaking of which, this is sponsored by, I'm just kidding. We don't have a sponsorship yet.
You had the right idea.
Very nice stand.
Right. But let me throw you all a little bit of love. You all have a really fun idea with your Vampish idea. I love what y'all sent to me with your sizzle. You've got a fun, creative, opportunity to tell a really unique way of looking at the vampire scene. It's really fun and exciting, and you can do those in different ways. You have it as, I think right now is like a 15 or 20-minute piece, but you can break those up. You can get an audience to follow you on just maybe one joke here or one joke there. And eventually you can find a following that's really going to love that as you continue to create that. And maybe you get a sponsor out of it that wants to be, in front or behind or a part of whatever it is that you're posting, and then eventually what you'll be producing, hopefully in a longer form. So that's sort of the idea. That's what a lot of people are going after and really trying to lift up their projects right now and how they're doing it.
Yeah, we've been really trying to think of creative ways to get our projects out there in a way that we have control over versus like waiting for investment. And so we're really excited about a few certain things that we're working on right now that will be seen through the socials. Yeah. What is the best way for people to get involved in the film community here in Louisiana?
Well, first of all, they can come and become a member of Film Louisiana. You can go to filmlouisiana.com. You can just register yourself on there, at least get the information that we're giving out, because we're constantly posting, and follow us on all the socials, obviously. We're constantly giving newsletters and updates and allowing for people to have an understanding of how they can get involved. We have, networking opportunities. We have one next week for all of our membership to come and join and meet people. We really are trying to host more gatherings. We're trying to get people more involved to know that, there may not be the bigger industry here right now, but you can be creating on the smaller scale, and you can meet other people that may have skills that you don't have, that may have, gear that you don't have, and obviously can be able to hopefully collaborate and be able to bring more stories to the marketplace. So that's one way. And then obviously just find ways of getting involved in your community. There are several other organizations and gatherings. I know there's a producer group gathering, there's actor group gatherings. Go and meet with these people, because all of these people are hungry to be creative. And it's not like everybody's, vying for one person's job and everybody's competing over that, but people are really interested in spending time in a creative place. And so that's what I did when I, was coming up in college. I just found a lot of my college peers and just said, look, you're a great sound recorder, you're a great camera operator, you're a great writer. I'm good at organizing people and I can act from time to time. Let's find a director, let's get people together and let's just go make stuff. And I hope people are getting more involved and more inspired to do that. Because if you do, that's what's going to lift you up. That's what's going to give you more opportunity. Going back to, creating stuff, go fail a couple of times, go make things that are terrible that nobody wants to see, but they tell you why, and then you learn from it. And it's like, okay, I get it now. Now I know how to edit this or how to shoot this. And maybe I can then start generating an audience that way. Or maybe you just become the cult classic that, everybody loves watching your absolutely hilariously really bad stuff, but hey, to you, it's the best thing in the world. There's that too. So just go have fun with it at the end of the day is really my advice.
If there was ever someone who was the meteorologist of the film industry here, I feel like that would be you. So what would you forecast happening over the next year or so after we just got this major news about how the incentive program is shifting a little bit?
We're going to see a slow trickle of projects coming in. There's a couple of big announcements that came out in the last week of some New Orleans projects coming in the fall. And we will see those. We will see people get back to work. What I really think is going to happen is what we kind of talked about on the independent scale. I think people are going to recognize that technology is going to allow for them to really become more efficient filmmakers and to tell stories in a unique way quicker. And so what I think is going to end up happening in the next year or two is you're going to see a lot more people pushing a lot more stories out because they can do them without having the bigger expenses or the longer runtimes of post-production. So we can go and we can shoot something and we can throw it into these new AI editing systems to allow for quicker ways for us to either get our edit done or fix a lot of the problems in post that we couldn't normally do. I do think that people with a knee-jerk reaction around AI right now do have valid concerns around copywriting. I totally get that. But you also need to understand they're not taking your job. They're enhancing you to have more opportunities to create more. And that is my opinion over the next couple of years, that we're going to start seeing a lot more content. We're just going to be able to see these budgets shrink because it's going to be cheaper. And then you're going to be able to have more opportunities to be able to push that content out in your own respect independently. Independent distribution is what I'm really looking forward to.
I see it the same way, an opportunity for you to be able to have more independence versus waiting for a studio to pick it up or opportunity to distribute yourself. It's just a shift of perspective, right? Do you want to tell us about any projects that you have in the horizon people can keep their eyes out for?
I am working on several projects. I do have a documentary that we are going to be shooting in September. I can't say too much about it right now, but it is based in Baton Rouge. It will be on one of your major streamers, so I'm really excited about this announcement. I'll obviously come back on and tell you all about it once we make that major announcement. And then we're constantly working, like I said, to the ranch to find ways to drive bigger business. And then I've partnered up with two great people, Frank Montanelli and Todd Lewis. We have a company called Full Armor, which we're trying to drive more independent film. We're really trying to find projects that we can keep people working on while we're waiting on these bigger projects to come in. And so we're constantly seeing and reviewing and making sure that these projects fit for Louisiana, fit for the producers that are trying to bring them in. And we're trying to obviously be a part of those and help them here in the state. So we're working constantly on driving more creative as much as we can here.
Thank you so much, Jason. We appreciate you tremendously and for being such a pioneer here in the state and being an advocate, a voice for all of us. And we're just so grateful for you.
I really appreciate you all. And I love the work you all are doing. So keep it up.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, review, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Thanks for listening to Off Script, and until next time, keep dreaming big and making bold moves.